This episode is brought to you by Stirling Soap Company. How often do you think about your soap? Well, if you answered, not much, maybe you should. You see, a lot of what passes for soap in stores is technically not soap, according to the FDA's definition. It's full of lab-created chemicals and detergents because, well, it's cheaper to make. Now, what if you could buy natural soap made from natural ingredients like tallow, palm oil, coconut oil, and scented with essential oils, and for just a little more than you'd pay for grocery store soap? Stirling Soap is 100% natural, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there's a product and a scent for just about everybody. Check them out for yourself at stirlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. Are you a hockey fan? Then you'll love Eric Zweig's new book, Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2. It's a treasure trove of untold tales, bizarre incidents, and captivating trivia that will leave even the most devoted puckhead astounded. The intense rivalries, epic showdowns, and historic clashes that shaped the NHL's early years, it's all in there. Zweig uncovers the true stories that helped shape the sport, ensuring that you will never look at hockey the same way again. Check out Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2 on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. Welcome back to another edition of This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. I'm your host, Steve White, ready to roll the dice and see what shakes out on this day in sports history. On this day in 1969, baseball manager Billy Martin slugged one of his own players. Yeah, can you imagine any job where you could hit one of your employees, like really pound on them, and then keep your job? So at this point, Billy Martin is the manager of the Minnesota Twins. The Twins played on the road in Detroit on August 6, 1969, and Twins pitcher Jim Perry pitched a 3-hit complete game in a 3-1 win against the Tigers. That was the third game in a 4-game series. So as ball players and managers did back in the late 60s and 70s, they went out for a couple of beers after the game. And Detroit at this time was Lindell AC's, and Lindell's is considered the original sports bar in America. In fact, Billy Martin gave some tips on how to decorate this place when he played for the New York Yankees back in the 50s, saying they should add photos of ball players and actual game memorabilia to the walls, like game-worn jerseys and balls. It was often compared to New York's Toots Shores. So, back to the altercation. It actually started like a day or two earlier. Twins pitcher Dave Boswell said that Martin had orchestrated one of the oldest pranks in baseball, the hot foot, which is simply a way of lighting one player's shoe on fire with their foot still in said shoe, but doing it in a way to not reveal yourself as the lighter of the fire. Also, you're not really looking for a conflagration here, just a small little match-size flame, enough to provide a little warmth. Boswell said the hot foot he had been on the receiving end of had given him a blister on that foot, and when asked to run 20 circuits of the outfield warning track earlier in the day on the 6th by Martin, Boswell completed 2 and then said the blister on his foot was killing him. He couldn't, and he wouldn't keep going. Words were exchanged, nothing more happens. Game is played, Twins win, go to Lindell AC's afterward to enjoy the rest of the night. Now at this point, Boswell apparently did not know who had orchestrated the hot foot until it was revealed at the bar that it had been Martin. Boswell left the bar steaming mad, and teammate Bob Allison went out to calm him down a little bit. Well, Boswell, who had been known for saying, "I'm good at 2 things, pitching and fighting," showed off his boxing skills to Allison firsthand by punching him in the gut, lifting him out of his expensive alligator shoes. When Allison was on the ground, he kicked him in the gut. Martin heard what was going on outside the bar, and he went to stop the fight between the 2 teammates. According to Martin, when he got outside, Boswell ripped off his shirt and started swinging at Billy. He landed a shot to the side of Martin's head and one to the ribs. Martin made a quick assessment of the situation he was in and started wailing on Boswell, hitting him in the stomach, the mouth, and he kept going north with shots to the nose and the eye. He said Boswell bounced off the wall of the alley, and then Martin hit him again. He was down for the count when he hit the ground. Boswell did require some medical attention and some dental work. He needed somewhere between 20 and 50 stitches, depending on the accounts that I read. Boswell had a few chipped teeth, 2 black eyes, and a handful of bruised ribs as well. It may be tough to understand in today's world of TikTok and Instagram and non-stop news coverage, but this incident did not actually get reported in the paper for a week when it finally came out on the front page of the sports section. Did Martin get fired? He did not. The Twins looked into it and determined to take no action against Boswell or Martin. Boswell went on to win 20 games that season with 195 strikeouts and a 3.23 ERA. The Twins actually won 95 games that year despite the seeming dysfunction, and they finished atop the AL West. And in an interview years later, Boswell said his favorite manager he ever played for was Billy Martin. On this day in 1992, pitcher Nolan Ryan was thrown out of a ball game for the first and only time in his career. Ryan was in the 26th of his 27-year career in the majors, and on this night, Ryan's Texas Rangers were hosting the Oakland A's. The A's had put up 2 in the 7th to take a 2-0 lead. In the 8th, after Nolan had struck out 12 in the game and facing Willie Wilson, he delivered a 92-mile-per-hour fastball to Wilson's thigh. Home plate umpire Richie Garcia immediately stepped out and tossed Ryan from the game. Wilson didn't charge the mound, but he did take some umbrage. Ryan said the pitch was delivered because Wilson had tripled off of him earlier in the game, and he shouted obscenities at him after he got to third. So Ryan decided to plunk him. It was the only time in his illustrious career that he'd been sent to the showers early by an umpire. On this day in 1930, a minor leaguer hit 3 home runs in the same inning. So, for this circumstance to even be possible, a team has to score a lot of runs in an inning. Just coming up to bat 3 times in the same inning is super rare, and this is the only instance where this happened in the history of professional baseball. So, this is a 1930 Texas League game between the Waco Cubs and the Beaumont Explorers. Gene Rye wasn't the biggest of men. His nickname was Half Pint, and this was not a situation like calling a bald man Curly or a fat guy Slim. The Half Pint moniker fit the unimposing 5'6" Rye. But he swung the bat like Babe Ruth on this night. Well, at least in one inning he did. Now, from the accounts that night, the wind was blowing out, and Katy Park, where this game was played, was known to have a short porch in both left and right field. When Rye stepped to the plate to lead off the 8th inning, his Cubs were down 6-2. Waco's bats, and especially Rye's, had been quiet thus far. The left-handed Rye sat on a Gerald Mallett fat pitch and sent it flying to the opposite field over the left field wall for a solo shot. Mallett couldn't seem to get anybody out in the inning, and he was replaced by Walter Newman. On Rye's second trip to the plate, there were 2 men on, and he blasted a 3-run shot. By this point, the Cubs were leading, and when Rye's 3-run homer was tallied on the scoreboard, it was 12-6 Waco. The Cubs' bats stayed warm, and they batted around again. As Rye stepped to the plate for the 3rd time in the inning, the bases were loaded, and the park was buzzing with excitement. Newman was still pitching for Beaumont, and he knew the deal. He wanted to deny Rye's spot in history. Newman actually had 2 strikes on him, but decided to go after him with an off-speed breaking ball, and Rye got all of it and lofted it over the wall and right for the grand slam and his 3rd home run of the inning. The Cubs ended up scoring 18 runs in that 8th inning to win 20-2. Rye's performance became part of Texas baseball lore, but it wasn't like teams were beating down the door to get to him. Only the Boston Red Sox showed any interest in signing Rye, and they did sign him to play in the 1931 season. He ended up having a cup of coffee with the Sox in 31, playing in 17 games, getting 39 at-bats with no home runs before a broken wrist sidelined him and ended his stint in the majors. He kept the dream alive a few more years after that, spending time in the minors in Texas and in New York before calling it a career in 1936. And on this day in 1926, 18-year-old American Gertrude Ederley became the first woman to swim the English Channel. Ederley, who went by Trudy, had been an Olympian in the 1924 Paris Games. She'd won a gold and 2 bronze medals. On this day, she began her historic swim a little after 7 a.m. in Grenay in France, swimming toward Dover in England. At this point in time, only 5 men had successfully crossed the channel before, with numerous unsuccessful attempts along the way. There were, and still are, myriad challenges, like 6-foot swells, changing tides that change every 5 or 6 hours, cold water, and lots of jellyfish. Trudy actually attempted this feat in 1925, but was unsuccessful, getting the tides wrong, and though she wanted to continue, her trainer told her to stop. She also wore a traditional swimsuit that got bogged down and also chafed her skin in that attempt in 25. So for attempt number 2, she had designed her own suit, which was a much lighter 2-piece, and she slathered herself with grease. The British press was very interested in Trudy's attempt, and the first usage of a wireless transmitter being used to describe a sporting event. Reporters on a following tugboat provided details on her progress to an eager audience on the opposite shore. When she got to the shore of Kingsdown, England that evening, there were hundreds who had been listening on the radio there to cheer her on. She was exhausted and had trouble pulling herself out of the water and onto the beach to officially complete the journey, but she pushed on and crawled onto the beach, swimming a distance of 35 miles in 14 hours, 39 minutes. It was the fastest time recorded at that point, besting the previous mark by about 2 hours. One journalist reporting the scene said she looked like a boxer who'd been punched a lot. The rough water pounded her in the face on her journey. Her tongue was swollen from the salt water, and she had numerous jellyfish stings on her body. There was one issue, though. There was an immigration official there to meet her. Ederley didn't have her passport, nor did any of the support personnel on the boat have their passports. Her arrival was delayed for a bit until she promised to present her papers to the proper authorities the following morning. Ederley came home to the U.S. a national hero, feted with a ticker tape parade in New York City. She was the first woman to ever receive that honor. President Calvin Coolidge called her America's best girl, and, as promised, her father bought her a red roadster to drive around in. She inspired generations of women to swim. In fact, the next 4 successful channel crossings after Trudy's on this day were completed by women. Ederley's time stood for 25 years until it was bested by an hour by another woman in 1951. Her story was recently made into a movie titled The Young Woman and the Sea, starring Daisy Ridley. It was released earlier this year and is available to watch on Disney+. Time now for today's non-sports fun fact. Technically speaking, bananas are berries, while strawberries are not. That's all for today. I'll be back tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.